Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Delwyn, and today we're diving into the shadowy corners of human nature. We're talking about the 5 weirdest serial killers in America. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill murderers. These are individuals whose crimes are so bizarre, they defy all logic and reason. Tonight, we'll unravel the dark and twisted tales of Richard Chase, Ed Gein, Albert Fish, H.H. Holmes, and David Parker Ray. These names might send shivers down your spine, and for good reason. Each of these killers has a story that's more horrifying than the last, filled with unimaginable acts of cruelty and madness. So grab your favorite blanket, turn off the lights, and get ready to delve into the macabre world of these monstrous figures. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail of these chilling accounts. Let's get started. Richard Chase, known infamously as the Vampire of Sacramento, was a man whose crimes were as gruesome as they were inexplicable. Born in 1950, Chase's descent into madness began early. He exhibited signs of severe mental illness, including hypochondria and paranoia, but it was his obsession with blood that would earn him his terrifying moniker. Chase believed that his blood was turning to powder, and that he needed to consume the blood of others to survive. This delusion drove him to commit a series of heinous murders in the late 1970s. His method? Drinking the blood of his victims and cannibalizing their remains. It's chilling to think about, but Chase truly believed he needed this to stay alive. His first known victim was Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer. Chase shot Griffin in a drive-by shooting, a prelude to the more brutal crimes that would follow. His next victims weren't so lucky. Teresa Wallen, 3 months pregnant, was found brutally murdered in her home. Chase had not only killed her but also engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism. Chase's final spree took place in January 1978, when he murdered Evelyn Miroth, her 6-year-old son Jason, and her 22-month-old nephew David. The scene was nothing short of a bloodbath. Chase had not only killed them, but had mutilated their bodies in ways that defy description. The police found him covered in blood, a macabre testament to his nickname. What makes Richard Chase particularly strange is not just the brutality of his crimes, but the sheer madness driving them. He was a man who lived in a world of delusions where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred. His story serves as a grim reminder of how mental illness, untreated and misunderstood, can lead to unimaginable horror. Next up, we have Ed Gein, the man whose gruesome acts inspired some of the most iconic horror characters in film history. Born in 1906, Gein grew up in a strict and abusive household, dominated by his fanatically religious mother. His upbringing was a cocktail of repression and obsession, a dangerous mix that would later manifest in horrifying ways. Gein's crimes came to light in 1957 when police investigated the disappearance of Bernice Worden, a local hardware store owner. What they found in Gein's farmhouse was beyond their worst nightmares. The house was a veritable chamber of horrors, filled with human remains repurposed into macabre household items. There were bowls made from skulls, lampshades crafted from human skin, and even a suit made entirely of female skin, which Gein reportedly wore. But Gein wasn't just a grave robber, he was also a murderer. He confessed to killing 2 women, Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden, though it's suspected there may have been more victims. His fascination with the female body, particularly its skin, was deeply rooted in his twisted relationship with his mother. He wanted to create a woman's suit so he could become his mother and literally crawl into her skin. Gein's story is particularly strange because of the sheer grotesqueness of his actions. He wasn't driven by a desire for power or revenge. His crimes were the result of a deeply disturbed mind, warped by years of abuse and isolation. His case has fascinated psychologists and criminologists for decades, serving as a grim example of how childhood trauma can lead to unimaginable horrors. The legacy of Ed Gein lives on in popular culture. He inspired characters like Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. Each of these characters embodies different aspects of Gein's twisted psyche, ensuring that his dark legacy will never be forgotten. Albert Fish, also known as the Gray Man, is one of the most sadistic killers in American history. Born in 1870, Fish's life was a tapestry of perversion and brutality. His most infamous crime was the murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd in 1928. He lured her away, tortured, killed, and cannibalized her. Years later, he sent a graphic letter to her mother, detailing the horrific acts. His trial was a media sensation, revealing his numerous mental disorders. Albert Fish's story is a chilling reminder of human depravity. H.H. Holmes, often referred to as America's first serial killer, constructed a labyrinthine murder castle in Chicago during the 1893 World's Fair. Born Herman Webster Mudgett in 1861, Holmes was a charismatic and intelligent man who used his charm to lure victims into his deadly hotel. The building was a maze of trapdoors, secret passages, and soundproof rooms designed for one purpose: murder. Holmes's murder castle was a three-story building that occupied an entire city block. The first floor housed shops and businesses, while the upper floors contained a series of rooms and corridors that defied logic. Many of the rooms were equipped with gas jets, allowing Holmes to asphyxiate his victims at will. There were also chutes that led directly to the basement, where Holmes had set up a dissection table and a crematorium. Holmes's victims were often young women who had come to Chicago seeking work or adventure. He would charm them, offer them a place to stay, and then lead them into his deadly maze. Once inside, they had little chance of escape. Holmes would often torture his victims before killing them, taking pleasure in their suffering. He would then dispose of their bodies in the basement, either by dissection or incineration. What makes H.H. Holmes particularly strange is the sheer scale and complexity of his crimes. He wasn't just a killer, he was a master manipulator and a skilled architect of death. His murder castle was a testament to his cunning and his cruelty, a place where he could indulge his darkest fantasies without fear of discovery. It's estimated that he may have killed as many as 200 people, though the exact number remains unknown. Holmes's story came to an end in 1894, when he was arrested for insurance fraud. During his trial, the full extent of his crimes was revealed, shocking the nation. He was eventually convicted of murder and hanged in 1896. But the legend of the murder castle lives on, a chilling reminder of the evil that can hide behind a charming smile. David Parker Ray, known as the Toy Box Killer, is perhaps one of the most sadistic and methodical killers in American history. Born in 1939, Ray spent his life perfecting his methods of torture and murder. His toy box was a soundproof trailer filled with an array of torture devices, which he used to inflict unimaginable pain on his victims. Ray's crimes came to light in 1999, when one of his victims, Cynthia Vigil, managed to escape. She had been held captive in the toy box for 3 days, enduring unspeakable torture. Her escape led to Ray's arrest and the discovery of his horrifying lair. The trailer was equipped with whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, leg spreader bars, surgical blades, and saws. There was also a gynecological chair in the center of the room, where Ray would strap his victims down and torture them. Ray's methods were meticulous and calculated. He would often drug his victims to prevent them from remembering the details of their captivity. He also recorded audio tapes which he would play for his victims, detailing the torture they were about to endure. These tapes were a chilling insight into Ray's twisted mind, revealing a man who took pleasure in the suffering of others. What makes David Parker Ray particularly strange is the sheer extent of his depravity. He wasn't just a killer, he was a sadist who took pleasure in the pain and fear of his victims. He would often involve his accomplices, including his girlfriend Cindy Hendy, in his crimes, making them complicit in his acts of torture. It's estimated that Ray may have killed as many as 60 women, though the exact number remains unknown. Ray's trial was a media sensation, with graphic details of his crimes shocking the nation. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to 224 years in prison, but the true extent of his crimes may never be known, as many of his victims were never found. The Toy Box Killer remains one of the most terrifying figures in criminal history, a man whose sadistic tendencies knew no bounds. So there you have it, 5 of the weirdest and most terrifying serial killers in American history. Richard Chase, the Vampire of Sacramento; Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield; Albert Fish, the Gray Man; H.H. Holmes, the Devil in the White City; and David Parker Ray, the Toy Box Killer. Each of these men committed crimes that defy comprehension, driven by motives that are as disturbing as they are inexplicable. These stories serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. They show us that evil can take many forms, from the delusional to the sadistic, and that it can hide behind the most ordinary of facades. It's a sobering thought, but one that we must confront if we are to understand the true nature of these monsters. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content. Your support helps me continue to bring you these dark and twisted tales. Until next time, stay safe and be aware of the shadows that lurk in the corners of our world.